there's a dark thread in our society where these incidents can happen to anyone at any time. I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. It's such a joy to speak to you today. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you for the time and consideration.
Well, this is a beautiful film. I'm speaking, of course, with Brad Bailey, the director of Her Fight, His Name, the story of Gwen Carr and Eric Garner. Um, it's incredible. It's an incredible piece. And how did you connect with Gwen?
Oh, wow. Um, it was I was December 2017, I had heard a news story that I lived in New York at the time that Erica Garner had passed away, and she was the daughter of Eric Garner.
Yes.
And the way the news report spinned it was that she died of a heart attack as a result of potentially some of the stress brought on by the activism for her father. And so that upset me, especially knowing some of the issues about Black maternal mortality and some of the ripple effects of discrimination and injustice that happen to families, to Black families in particular, and that angered me. And so a few months later, I called Miss Carr, and I asked to follow her, and we met for the first time in Cleveland at the commemoration of Tamir Rice, actually. And that was the first time we met, and we hit it off ever since. I had expected this story to be done in 3 months. It ended up taking 6 years. And then now at the 10-year anniversary of the incident, I realized that the time we took was critical time, that unfortunately it just had to take those 6 years to do the story we did the way we did it. Um, because there were so many different news, breaking news, the pandemic, so many things happening that would stop, stall, delay, and but we at the end of the day, I always knew we'd keep pushing forward.
Well, I mean, certainly Eric's death, I mean, was an absolute lightning bolt culturally. The world, or at least northern, or sorry, America responded with these conversations that are so important. Um, and I would love to hear from you, like as we look at the relationships between the Black community and the way they've been treated. Do you think progress has been made?
That's a really good question. I don't think I've been asked that question. Um, yes and no. I think awareness has been made in terms of like these types of issues,
Yeah.
but progress. Well, I mean, Ms. Carr did sort of has been responsible for the pushing of legislation, especially in New York State, the Anti-Chokehold Act, which will 100%, which will 100% save lives.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there's an undercurrent thread in our society. There's a dark thread in our society where these incidents can happen to anyone at any time. Literally 2 days ago, I was sitting at an airport and waiting for my plane, and the police came up to me, three officers,
Yeah.
and the initial officer was like, "Hello, sir. I'm going to have to ask you." And then I was just sitting at my gate, just like minding my business. And I think the officer that was with him gently told him that's not the guy.
Mm.
And so he's like, and so instead of just apologizing, he immediately turned to another African American gentleman a few feet away, which was I guess the subject of their interrogation, so to speak. And and it infuriated me. Because I was like, wow, I could literally be sitting behind the security perimeter of a major US airport at my gate, and somebody can come up, and something could have started from that. Things have started from that in the past. People have lost their lives in those types of miscommunications. And so we have to really understand, for example, why would he think me and the guy they actually ended up talking to look nothing alike? And
Mm.
so what was it about me that he thought he had to approach me in that regard? Where my education didn't matter. None of that matters in the beginning, just the way I look. And so we have to have these deeper conversations with people who are probably well-meaning. I'm sure he thinks he's a nice guy. So I'm sure he has all types of friends. But we have to understand and sort of look at what's deeper going on. And I think people have to address their own internal hearts to trying to find some answers.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I mean Gwen, following Gwen in this film, I mean, she's remarkable. Like what a remarkable woman with everything that she's been through, not just Eric's passing, but Erica's, losing two husbands. I think she loses two as well. Just she's been through so much. But one of the things she says really struck me, and I wanted to ask you about it. She talks about how her pain has turned into purpose. And I would love to know what your thoughts are on that and how that can help inspire the Black community.
Sure. Um, I think that the African American community, the reason we've made the progress we've made is because that pain has been turned into a purpose and in terms of into activism that gets channeled into activism. And so one of the things I want to show with this film was how a relatively not clearly not normal, but somebody who was living a relatively sort of normal life, she was a transit operator for the New York transit system, entered into a media, not just firestorm, but hurricane,
Hmm.
and how she handled and I think this film is a procedural in terms of how individuals can go from their quote unquote normal lives to affecting change on a mass scale. And so, no, people don't have to be Gwen Carr, but they can find ways to manage to make change in their own lives, which is by itself critical. And then not just in their own lives, but in their local communities and in the larger world. And I think that each of these mothers that I call it a sisterhood of mothers, that she walks alongside of, does that in their own ways as well. And so I think we have to come into this almost new age of activism, especially in the current political climate we're about to enter, where people have to break out of this complacency. And I know people are tired, and I know people have their own issues they have to deal with. But I think that we realize that our strength comes from collective action, and
Hmm.
that hopefully Miss Carr, and looking at her story and her path would be a lesson for that to people in many ways.
So how do we do that? How do we come together with collective action? I love that phrase because, this is a sort of film that makes you want to show your support.
Yeah.
Uh, and so what's the best way to do it?
Well, first there has to be a will. There has to be a will to do it, and then not from the will has to be matched with the actual inspiration. What is how do people get inspired in their day to day? What is it that inspires people in their day to day? And just by making that change. And this film I want to be universal. I just don't want it to affect Black people. I don't want it to affect just people of color. I want anybody watching this film, no matter who they are, no matter where they're from, to identify with her. She is a mother that loved her son. She's a mother, just like many other mothers or aunts or grandmothers that keep mementos and photos on the wall for generations. So this is universal. And so I want when I've talked about this film all over the world to people, they've been able to identify with Miss Carr, and they have no, you would think on the surface there isn't any identification whatsoever, but there is. We took inspiration from a French writer by the name of Annie Ernaux, who recently won the Nobel Prize in Literature, and I've been able to blessedly ask Miss Ernaux this in person on the couple occasions that I met her, and to show her that like there are similarities all over the world. And I've done even yearly lectures at Columbia comparing Annie Ernaux um, to Gwen Carr and the similarities of these women. A French woman and Miss Carr, you would think, on the surface have nothing in common, but they have a lot in common. They're women that represent their generation. They're women that represent, living from the post-war era to the present day, and they're women that use memories as triggers for reflection and action. And I think that finding that universal aspect and telling people who may not have any dog in this fight that yes you do, this is a critical issue that all of us need to be aware of, and changing one mind is how we get there.
It's remarkable. Like I said, this film is remarkable, and I love the way you're phrasing that because that's this film frames itself around a mother and reminds us that the scope is much larger. It's
Yes.
it's a both and and I think that's such a beautiful way to scope this conversation. It really is amazing.
Right. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. And it was a labor of love, really. And we could have people say we could have addressed the film in anger, we could have addressed it different ways. I'm like, no, it's a story about a mother at
Mm,
its core, and how she not just processes her grief, but how she reflects and loves and remembers her family, and how she honors that memory.
yeah,
So,
absolutely. Brad, I really appreciate it. I know we're out of time, but I want to thank you so much for the chance to speak to you because it really is it's an eye-opening film that points us to such an important conversation that we need to have and inspires to action. Thank you so much.
no, thank you. This is a pleasure. Thank you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Have a great day.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye
Thank
bye.
you.